Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you as usual. Once again, Friday, January 24th. Yesterday, 4-2, 2-1 in each sport. Nice winning night. I'm on a nice roll right now, man. I think I actually had my best week in history over the last 7 days. According to Action Network, it was the best since I started tracking there. So the last 3 years or something. It may have been the best in history, but I don't want to jinx myself. I'm trying to be selective. I only have one play tonight, so it's either going to win or lose. So either way, whatever. It's going to be in the NBA tonight. I'm finally back on the NBA after not having an NBA play for the last few days. Although I should have yesterday with the San Antonio Spurs, because I was right about that blowout win in Paris in front of the Wemba crowd there. I was definitely right about that game. It felt it was a little bit too weird to play it, but because you never really know with these weird Europe games. But I definitely nailed that one. The plays that I actually had 4-2, like I said, could have been maybe even better than that. With Sam Houston not getting there, they were winning the game early, and then they fell behind. They came back. They made multiple different comebacks in the game. They were never really out of it, and they wound up losing by 2. And unfortunately for me, there were actually 2s out there at some points before the game went off, which I didn't really expect. I know I had them +1 or 1.5. I forget which one I took. Didn't really think that we were gonna see 2s out there. Oh well, we did. That sucks because the 2 would have been a push. So push is significantly better than a loss, obviously, but I'll still take the winning day. Iona got there, and then Maryland certainly got there with an outright win. And they wound up pulling away, too. It was a major outright upset win over Illinois. And the final score wasn't even close. And then hockey, 2-1. Vegas Knights got there. Anaheim, really easy win in the late game. And then the loser was Buffalo, which, what can you say about Buffalo, man? It was similar to the previous game where I know Buffalo didn't have their starting goalie in net the previous time I bet than they did last night. They had the better goalie in there, and they still didn't win. The final score looked way worse than it actually was, with 2 empty net goals at the end there. So it was a 5-2 final, but the game was way closer than that. And Buffalo actually outshot Calgary. They outhit them. They outface-offed them. They won all the important statistics basically, and they were winning the game at one point 2-1. But they wound up losing. It was 3-2 really late in the game. And then 2 empty net goals. What can you say about that? It was closer than the final looked. As taking an underdog that plays like that, I don't think I regret that. All right, let's talk about today. And then, hopefully we'll get this done quickly. We do have some decent college basketball. Usually Friday you get Ivy League going on and stuff like that. We have some decent games here today. Villanova is at Marquette. Marquette, 10th ranked in the country, of course. They're the biggest team, I guess. Well, them or maybe Purdue and Michigan. Those 3 teams all on the slate tonight. Marquette, pretty big favorite, almost a double-digit favorite at home against Villanova here. Marquette sitting at 9.5. I don't know which way I would actually even prefer to play this game. This is a tough game to handicap. Villanova's coming off an ugly loss to Georgetown. They shouldn't have lost that game, although I mentioned I did lean to Georgetown because Georgetown was coming off an embarrassing loss as a pretty big favorite, where I had actually lost on Georgetown, unfortunately. So Georgetown was in a nice bounce-back spot there. Villanova, they play slow. That's what they did in that game at home. They lost the game outright. Maybe they were looking ahead to this game as well, which kind of factored into why I leaned to Georgetown in that game as well. But that means Villanova may be in a bounce-back spot here and may show up in this one after a pretty ugly loss, really, to Georgetown in that prior game where they probably should have won because they were favored. Now they get to go to Marquette. Maybe they will be focused. Marquette has been the best team in the Big East. I know St. John's is actually ahead of them right now, but Marquette still the best team in the Big East. I think St. John's is a close second, really. But Marquette's rolling along. They just bounced back from that loss to Xavier, beat Seton Hall. Not an impressive win, so I think they're going to be ready for this game as well. That'll just give them some momentum coming into this. So neither team is really in a bad spot here. In Villanova, like I said, they do try to slow the pace down, but Marquette likes to speed it way up, and they're at home, so Marquette may be able to speed this game up, and that would throw Villanova out of their element. And if that happens, I don't like Villanova's chances, really. And because it would be Marquette playing the fast-paced game, laying points. It's more conducive to Marquette maybe covering that number as well if they are able to speed this game up. But I'm not really saying I necessarily lean that way, though. I mean, I think Villanova is in the bigger, like, bounce-back spot, so I could see Villanova showing up and playing competitively in this one. So I don't know. I don't know if that means I would slightly lean to actually taking the points with Villanova. I mean, I certainly don't want to do that with the potential of the pacing contrast here, so I'm going to stay away. A couple of big A-10 games here as well. St. John's is at Dayton. Dayton only laying 5.5 here in this one against St. Joe's, even though, as I've said, Dayton, pretty good team, under the radar. They're one of the top teams in the A-10 still, like power ratings-wise. They just came off crushing Duquesne on the road. I mentioned I liked Dayton in that one the other day. They had a nice bounce back kind of from an ugly performance against Loyola Chicago and a few ugly games in the prior games. So they're rolling along. I mean, does that mean they're going to be in any sort of like letdown spot now, though, after beating Duquesne, who is actually ahead of them in the standings? I don't know, because they do have Bonaventure and St. Louis up next. St. Louis is up near the top of the standings here. St. Bonaventure has one of the best overall records, but conference-wise, not so much. So does that mean that Dayton's going to overlook St. Joe's? I don't really know. And St. Joe's is almost tied with them in the standings, right behind them. So it is still, I think, a big game for both teams. I kind of think both teams are going to show up for this one. St. Joe's, they are coming off beating Davidson in a bounce back after they lost to VCU, which that potentially was a loss that could have hung them over because that's a big game against VCU. They did not suffer from the hangover, and they won on the road at Davidson. But now this is a second straight road game, having to go to Dayton, so that's not really the easiest either, having to go up from wherever the hell Davidson is, South Carolina, I think North Carolina, one of those two, up to Dayton. Not really the easiest spot there. Dayton's down from 6 to 5.5, though, so the line is moving towards St. Joe's a little bit, maybe the thought being that Dayton may look like they're in maybe a little bit of a sandwich spot between Duquesne and whoever their upcoming opponents are. Again, like I said, St. Louis and Bonaventure. I think Bonaventure first. So we'll see. I mean, again, it's a tough read, obviously. This is why I'm not playing these games, because I don't even know if I have a strong opinion on those. But again, the early market read does look like the money's coming in on St. Joe's a little bit there. And maybe Dayton feeling a little bit too high on themselves after just destroying Duquesne. Maybe the biggest matchup, probably the biggest matchup on the slate here is Michigan and Purdue. A lot of big late games here. Number 21 and number 11. I think Michigan is still underranked, man. I think they're better than the 21st best team. I mean, KenPom has Michigan 12th and Purdue 9th. So he's got these two teams closer than what the rankings makers do. And the odds makers are closer to what KenPom is telling you, with Purdue being a 4.5-point favorite at home. So they're getting home court and not a whole lot else here. Number 21 and number 11, like I said. Michigan, they're coming off a couple of kind of lackluster performances, losing in that weird buzzer beater game against Minnesota there, which I think was overtime as well. Very strange loss there from Michigan. And then they did bounce back, but they played a pretty close game against Northwestern at home, where Michigan probably should have won that game more easily, laying almost double digits in that one and not winning by that much. And that went into overtime as well. So Michigan suffered another scare there. Maybe they were looking ahead to Purdue. So I kind of expect Michigan to show up this time. I know it's a little bit tiring when you're playing overtime games, multiple overtime games in a row, but still, I think Michigan, they're going to have a lot of reason to show up in this game. So I think they will. Purdue, though, they're coming off a pretty bad loss to Ohio State, where I was on Ohio State in that one. I grabbed the points and had a little bit on the money line in that one, got the nice outright win there, as Purdue was coming off that win over Oregon, and they had this Michigan game up next. So I felt it was a sandwich spot with travel back from the Pacific Coast, so that wasn't a good game for Purdue. So they returned home, had that happen, and then now they're just staying at home with Michigan coming in. So they're in a spot where they should bounce back, and they should play better in this next game as well. So both teams are really in spots where they should play better. And in that case, I don't know if maybe then it comes down to, well, I think Michigan is kind of the undervalued commodity here, and it should be a more competitive game than what the rankings would suggest. I don't know. It's a tough read again here, man. Purdue's up from 4 to 4.5. I might slightly lean to grabbing the points with Michigan just because I think that may be where the value is, and both teams have a lot of reason to show up in this game. Both teams kind of in bounce back mode here, in my opinion. Although Michigan is the team with a little bit more travel right now and maybe a little bit more tired off of those OT games. So we'll see. And then we got Bonaventure at VCU. And looking at the team's records, both teams have really good overall records. So you might think, why is VCU laying 12.5 here? If you have a 15-4 team against a 15-5 team, although obviously VCU in conference play has been way better, 5-1 versus Bonaventure's 3-4. Obviously, that means Bonaventure played a weaker out-of-conference schedule than VCU did, which is true. That is the case. But odds makers are telling you VCU is the significantly better team here, laying that many points here at home against St. Bonaventure. That looks like a misleading line, type of line the public would come in and think, how am I getting that many points with a team that has that good a record with St. Bonaventure, and think that it might be competitive and want to grab Bonaventure? I would be hesitant to do so. Like I said, I think Bonaventure was overperforming to start the season. But then again, is VCU going to be feeling really kind of plump and gay here off of annihilating URI like that, Rhode Island? Huge win, 81-57. When you beat down anybody like that, you might be feeling a little bit overconfident coming out of that. So I don't know. But then again, VCU did lose at St. Bonaventure by 2, so they might want a little bit of revenge there. But St. Bonaventure is going to remember that as well. Remember that VCU played them close at their own place. So it is a situation where I do still expect both teams are going to show up in this one. And if that's the case, maybe VCU will be able to get it done by margin here, as it looks like a misleading spread there. But then again, VCU, they're coming off that big win that might have them feeling a little bit too high on themselves, where Bonaventure's lost 2 games in a row. So Bonaventure kind of in bounce back mode here, as they have not played well in their last few conference games. So 1-4 in their last 5 conference games, not great. So maybe a little bit extra motivation on the side of Bonaventure there. So I don't know. Situationally, it actually looks like a slight lean to the Bonaventure side, even though the line does look very misleading and kind of telling you that VCU would be the right side there. But in that situation, I'm not really so sure about that. Penn State at Iowa, 2 teams that like to play really fast. Iowa's a slight home favorite. Oddsmakers telling you Penn State's the slightly better team, which they are. They just bounced back from a few tough games in a row. A couple of close battles, too, against Oregon and Michigan State, where I thought they were in not the greatest spot coming off of that, but Rutgers was also in a bad spot here. So Penn State was actually able to get the win and cover against Rutgers. And I did mention, gun to my head, I did actually like Penn State to cover in that one, because both teams are in bad spots there. Rutgers was coming off a big win, I think, too. So Penn State was able to end that long loss streak, which I think that might help them, propel them forward with some momentum there, breaking that loss streak. It's not a very huge deal to beat Rutgers, but it is still a tough travel spot, having to go out to Iowa City, and they have Michigan up next in 3 days. So whenever that is, is that Monday? Is that when that's going to be? I don't know, whenever that is. Yeah, so still, not really a spot where I want to come in and jump on Penn State. Iowa, they're coming off an inexplicable loss, to be honest, to Minnesota. I had Iowa. That was my only college basketball loss in that hot run that I had, that 7-1 2-day run that I had. That was the only loss. I don't know how that happened. Minnesota coming off the upset of Michigan. Iowa at home. Iowa plays fast. Minnesota doesn't play fast. And Iowa was not able to speed up the game in this one. It was just, I don't know what happened in that game, man. So Iowa, you got to think they're in a pretty angry mood right now, trying to get a win. So I probably have a slight lean to Iowa in this one, because they're the way more embarrassed team right now. I think they're going to be in an angry mood. They're up from 2-3 with juice here. So line maybe getting a little bit too far on them, just because that's, again, Ken Pom does have Penn State as the better team. Odds makers also do. Iowa's not getting a full home court here, but getting up to 3 through the 3 is getting pretty close to getting a full home court there. And I do think Penn State is still the slightly better team, but in that spot, I think you're going to get an angry Iowa team. And then UCLA is at Washington. UCLA, nice win over Wisconsin. That's what they're coming off of. And now they're having to go up to Washington. And they do have USC up next. That's always kind of a rivalry there between USC and UCLA. So that might be a bigger game as well than Oregon, Michigan State. So kind of all bigger games to them on deck here. So this has the looks of almost a sandwich spot. I don't quite want to play it, but this is the closest to being a play for me on the college basketball slate. Would be taking the points with Washington here. UCLA, again, coming off a big ranked win here. They actually, I think, had to come back against Wisconsin. Well, actually, yeah, they came back after losing in the first half, and then they were winning most of the second half, and they almost blew that lead somehow because it looked like at that point maybe they probably should have covered, and they didn't cover. They did win. Now they go out on the road up to Seattle. Not an easy travel spot, really, even though they're used to going up there because both of those teams are in the Pac-12, so it's not totally unfamiliar to them, but still kind of a difficult spot after that Wisconsin win there. And then with USC, Oregon, Michigan State up next, I don't think I really trust UCLA in this spot. Washington, they're just going to be looking for a win right now, man. They're coming off a string of really difficult games. Illinois, Michigan State, Michigan, Purdue, and Oregon, and they at least played competitively to some extent in some of those games. Really, they got trashed by the two Michigans, and other than that, they played respectably in the other games. So I think it could be a bounce-back spot for Washington. You're coming back home, hosting UCLA. It is a big game. I'm kind of tempted to do it, man. I mean, what does the market look like here? UCLA is up from 4 through the 5, though. I don't know. I don't know if I really want to do it. 5 with juice. It is a situation, though, where UCLA does like to play really slow, and they do tend to go silent on offense quite often. Washington, on the other hand, does play faster, so they're going to want to try to speed this game up and get UCLA out of their comfort zone, and maybe they will be able to do that in this one. Again, they are in a bounce-back spot, and at this point, Washington way at the bottom of the conference. So this game is surrounded by bigger games for UCLA. Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Let's add the play. Let's play Washington. I don't like adding these extra plays on the fly, man, but I think it is warranted. Let's grab Washington plus the 5 in that one. So we'll do that, and then hopefully we'll get it. Hopefully it gets there, man, because I do think Washington's got to be in a bounce-back spot, and none of these teams that they face recently are easy teams to beat at the very least. So even though, yeah, I know Washington's not good, but I think they're probably, I don't know, I think at least better than like Minnesota, maybe. I don't know. I mean, they're towards the bottom of the Big Ten, but still, I mean, I think the spot sets up nicely for them. Hopefully we'll get something out of Washington in this one. Hey, they do still have great Osabor, as we see here. He's leading the team in every single statistic, which doesn't speak well for the surrounding cast there for Washington. Osabor transferred over from Utah State, and yet Utah State is having a great season so far, and Washington has not really improved. So that's not great, but, you know, pun intended there. All right, I do think it is a decent spot, though, to grab the points there with Washington. Okay, moving over to NHL. We have small NHL and NBA slates here. NHL, Vegas and Dallas is a pretty big game, and that's the one big game, really. Maybe I'll talk about 2 games, but that game is big. Dallas up from minus 145 to minus 152. 90% of tickets, 99% of the cash. I probably agree with the line move there on the Dallas side because Vegas is in a back-to-back. Like I said, I had them last night, and they won in that zigzag spot, getting revenge on St. Louis, and that at least ended their losing momentum. And for Vegas, at least what you get out of Vegas is they alternate goalies because both goalies are actually pretty good, so you will get Hill in this game, and he will be rested, but they are still playing on a back-to-back with travel from St. Louis to Dallas, so still not really the easiest spot for Vegas, even though, yeah, they should be focused, should still show up for this one, but Dallas, coming off a loss to Carolina, they've had 2 days off, so Dallas has a big rest edge in this one, and for that reason, I think that is kind of the determining factor in this game. That's why the line is moving on Dallas a little bit, and I don't disagree with it. I think the rest is definitely a key component there. It is being factored into the number at this point, but still, I mean, that's the way that I would lean there. I would not want to try to take Vegas on a back-to-back, even though that was maybe a new momentum starter for them. And then Utah-Winnipeg I will talk about because I think this is a spot where if you play this game, I think you've got to play Winnipeg in some fashion. Utah coming off 2 huge wins, and they're on a back-to-back, and the One of those two huge wins was against Winnipeg. So this is going to be a revenge spot for Winnipeg, quick revenge, where they just lost on Monday to Utah in Utah. Utah with the big win there. And then Utah yesterday went out and they beat Minnesota and shut them out 4-0. That's a huge win for Utah there too. So now Utah's coming off of that on a back-to-back. They get Winnipeg on the back-to-back now with travel, though Minnesota to Winnipeg is not a huge amount of travel, but still, I mean, that's not a great spot to be in, and up against a Winnipeg team that's probably gunning for you because you just beat them. It's not a great spot for Utah in this one. Winnipeg, they did just beat Colorado, though, so that is a big win as well, beating Colorado in overtime 2 days ago. So I don't think I can quite put my money on Winnipeg either because they are returning home from that as well. They went into elevation. I do think they overlooked Utah because they had that bigger game against Colorado on deck. They lost the Utah game. They beat Colorado. Now they have Utah and then Calgary, who are the last two teams that beat them both in a row. So this is almost like a palindrome schedule here where they lost to Calgary, lost to Utah, then they had Colorado, and then they play Utah and then Calgary to kind of get out of that. It's almost like I don't even know. It's almost like a stack where it's like like first in, last out type of thing. This is crazy, man. So Winnipeg may be looking for revenge in back-to-back games here against Utah and Calgary. I know, like I said, yeah, they're coming off the big win over Colorado, but they do have 1 day off. Utah has no days off. Winnipeg is looking for revenge. So I would only look to the Winnipeg side there. Winnipeg up from -190 to -213. They do have 79% of the cash on them with 50% of tickets evenly split. So it almost looks like the public ticket percentage doesn't even want Winnipeg in this one, which is crazy. So I would maybe either lay the puck line with Winnipeg, or you can get a decent price on that probably, or play something like Winnipeg to win in regulation. When you like a favorite like that and there was a pretty substantial favorite, you can get that price way down by playing them to win in regulation. But then, of course, if the game goes into overtime, you do lose that bet. But that is a way to get a cheaper price if you think they're going to win easily enough that they win in regulation. I mean, if they're going to win and cover a puck line, they're going to have to win in regulation as well. So, it's almost the same thing. It's just you get a decent price on that. Nate, what's up, man? Not Rossi either, although that's close to Russo. And you said Russo, right, the other day. Russo was actually closer. Thanks for hanging out, man. And then NBA, I do have one play in the NBA on this short slate here. I'll just talk about it right away because it is the first game on deck, and it is going to be laying the points with the Charlotte Hornets. I know how ugly it looks. Charlotte, 4.5. It is up to 5.5 already, though. It was 4.5 like an hour ago, and now it's 5.5. I would still do it at like 5, whatever. I mean, it's not a huge difference, really. Once you get over that 2-bucket number, over the 4, basically anything between 4.5 and 6 is pretty much the same. 4.5, 5, 5.5 are all kind of the same. And of course, it's still below 7. Hornets, 52% of tickets, 66% of the cash, up from 4 to 5.5 now. Looks like mostly probably 5s because it's 5.5 with reduced juice. This is just a spot to fade Portland, man, because of the lack of rest. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Although, not only the lack of rest, though, I think Portland's going to be feeling pretty high on themselves right now, man. They've already had a winning road trip here. It's a 3-game road trip. They went down to Florida, and they beat Miami and Orlando. And not only did they beat Orlando, but they crushed them 101-79. Just totally embarrassed Orlando in their own place. Orlando did have Banchero. Not only did they have Banchero, but they had Wagner came back in that game too, which I apologize. I didn't realize Wagner was coming back in that game. I thought he wasn't going to be back until February, so I completely missed out on that. So Wagner came back in the game. The more important Wagner, I think, because I think Mo Wagner is his brother, the one who's not as key a player. So that was a big reverse injured player spot for the Magic. And if that was his first game back, which I think it was, Magic were 9.5-point favorites, and they got absolutely drilled by Portland. But then again, even if I had seen it, I don't think I would have wanted to play Portland in that one coming off beating Miami, but they still did it. So 2 huge wins. I think after beating Orlando with their 2 star players back like that, Portland's got to be feeling really nice, plump and gay coming off of that win, man. A nice fat and sassy there. Now they get Charlotte on a back-to-back. So that was yesterday that they beat Orlando. And up next in 2 days, they have to face Oklahoma City and then Milwaukee and then Orlando again and then Phoenix, who's been hot. Indiana's been hot as well. So if they're going to overlook any of these teams, it's going to be Charlotte, man. So I think this is a really bad spot for Portland, rest-wise and otherwise. I think it's a sandwich spot as well, basically. Not only is it a back-to-back, it's a third game in 4 days, all in different cities. Fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities. It's actually a fifth game in 7 days, going back to Saturday. It is a sixth game in 9 days. And it is a seventh game in 11 days. I mean, this is just a grueling schedule, man, with very few days off for Portland. I think they're not going to have a whole lot left in the tank here for this game against Charlotte. I don't like it. I think it's a terrible, terrible rest spot, terrible just mental spot as well, off of that crushing win over Orlando. I think they're going to be feeling way too high on themselves. Meanwhile, Charlotte obviously has the rest advantage here. And Charlotte, yeah, they're coming back from a one-game stint over in Memphis. They had 1 day off. They lost the game. So I think they could be in a bounce-back spot here. It's not really like a road trip or anything like that when it's just one game. So they were just at home. Now they're back at home. It's not like they're going to have a lot of stuff to do at home because they were just here. And last time they were on this floor, they did win over Dallas. So they went out to Memphis. I mean, they're not going to beat Memphis on the road. I mean, that's a tall order. They didn't do it. They lost by double digits. Now they're coming back home. I think they're in the much better spot. And in that entire span where it's a seventh game for Portland, I think it's only a fifth game for Charlotte in the same time span. So it's crazy, crazy rest difference. And Charlotte, I mean, they've only played one home game going all the way back to before that Dallas game on the 20th. Their prior home game wasn't since the 7th. So they have not been at home for a whole lot of games here. So I think it's going to help them being at home. They're going to have the crowd around them. It's a good spot to catch Portland in. Give me Charlotte. And then also the line is just going to look kind of weird, right? Because the Hornets have a terrible record, worse than the Blazers record. But the Hornets' home record is actually at least better than the Blazers' road record. Not by much, but at least that's saying something, where most of the Hornets' wins have come on this floor at home. So that's not a horrible sign. But the fact that they're laying 4.5 and they have a worse record, I think the public is not going to really want much of a piece of this. I mean, they're not going to play this game at all probably, but are they really going to lay points at the Hornets, especially after what they saw the Blazers just do last night? But I like it. Give me the Charlotte Hornets in that one. Then we do have Cleveland and Philadelphia, but man, I mean, Cleveland's up from 9 to 10 on the road in this one. 80% of tickets, 96% of the cash on them. Philadelphia, they just can't get right, man. I mean, they have just too many injuries, too many suspensions. I don't even know what's going on. Embiid, yeah, is still out for this game here. I don't know what's going to happen with the rest of these guys. Looks like Lowry is out as well. Drummond is out. Both of them look like they're coming back tomorrow, potentially. They're slated to come back, at least for the Sixers. So this is just a Sixers team that just cannot have a full roster together, man. They've played only 10 games with a full roster this season, and they are 7-3 in those games. But obviously, that means without them, they're just absolutely miserable. Without them, they're 8-24. Without their full complement of players, that's just terrible. They're coming off a really embarrassing loss by whatever that is, 35 at Denver. Just terrible, terrible stuff. But they're returning over from a road trip now, coming out of elevation. So it's not even a great spot for Philadelphia because they're returning from a road trip. So even if you lost really bad in your last game on the road trip, because it's a road trip return, it tends to not be the greatest spot. Cleveland did just lose a tough game against Houston. I mentioned I did like Houston in that game. Houston was able to get the big win there. So maybe looking to fade Houston whenever they play next, which might be tomorrow or something. So Cleveland is coming off that, which was a tough loss for them. And they do have actually, they have Houston in revenge tomorrow. So that's actually Houston's next game is against Cleveland again tomorrow. So Cleveland is actually in a Houston sandwich here, which is very bizarre. But there's no way I can play Philadelphia, like I said, with Embiid out and returning home from a road trip. No possible way I can do that. But I don't think you're getting any value laying like almost 10 points or whatever on the road with Cleveland either. So I'm not going to play this game at all. Cleveland will be looking for that revenge against Houston tomorrow, though, and it is going to have to be in a back-to-back. But they may still be able to get it done there. I don't know. We will see. And that game, is that game going to be at home against Houston? I don't even know. It probably is, right? Yes, it will be. Because the loss was at Houston, and that game will be in Cleveland tomorrow. And then, New Orleans at Memphis, not a whole lot to say there. Memphis up from 11 to 12, 85% of the tickets, 98% of the cash. New Orleans has had some games. They had a game against Milwaukee postponed because of snow in the New Orleans area and in Pensacola, Florida. Really ridiculous. I think they hadn't had snow in that area since like the 50s. Something really crazy like that. Historical event. So I guess postponed because I guess they don't know how to handle snow down south. I don't know, though, because it seems like everything's becoming pussified, man, because Utah, I think maybe not only postponed, but canceled the game that they were going to have yesterday or 2 days ago or something against, I think it was yesterday, against Toronto in Utah. It's like, what are you talking about? You're going to not play a game in Utah because of snow? Yeah, because they never get snow in Utah. Huh? What are you talking about? That made no sense to me. Like, everything's just seemingly becoming so pussified now that you won't even fly in and play a basketball game because snow happened. Give me a break, man. But whatever. New Orleans coming off, speaking of Utah, coming off beating Utah in back-to-back games. Utah almost got the revenge in the zigzag spot there. I'd mentioned I liked Utah to cover in that zigzag, and they did. So now New Orleans is coming off of that. I mean, yeah, likely they should want to... Wait, what happened here? Oh, I was looking at the Milwaukee game that was on tap. That Milwaukee game was the one that got postponed, right? Yeah, so now they're playing at Memphis. So they haven't played since the 20th. So they have a little bit of extra rest, but I don't know that rest is going to help them because when you have a lot of winning momentum like that, you don't really want to rest and break up the momentum. So I don't know, but it is also starting a road trip. So you do tend to be focused when you start a road trip. And of course, they should probably be focused because it is Memphis. But Memphis has been playing well as well. Memphis just beat Charlotte, like I said, and they're just staying at home. They don't really have another big game up next, so not a horrible spot for Memphis either. The price seems a little high, though, unless does New Orleans have injuries again here? I don't know. It looks like Zion is going to miss this game. I mean, what else is new? This guy's been missing so many games. So that's part of the reason why the line is as high as it is that Zion Williamson is out again for New Orleans after they had him back, and they started playing well with like most of their players, were almost their entire roster intact for a while, but now he's going to be out again. Yeah, what can you do? All right, that's going to do it for me, man. My two plays today are the Washington Huskies in college basketball +5 and Charlotte Hornets -4.5 college basketball. NBA professional basketball. Even those teams could beat college teams. That's going to do it for me. Tower Gang Tone on Twitter. Follow the Tower Gang podcast, of course, the most offensive podcast out there. Patreon.com/Tower Gang. You have bonus content, pre-show, post-show. Hang out with us in a Telegram, and that's going to do it, man. Have a good one. Peace.